Hi again. In this video, I'm going to share a little bit about how I became a virtual assistant with literally no formal training, just to kind of prove to you if you need the example of someone who went to school for something totally different, never used it, and did something totally other without any formal training. Um, yeah, like everything I learned that I use now as a virtual assistant now. But I've kind of learned on the job. I kind of just learned on the go. And I think a lot of my success in both being a virtual assistant and a pet sitter is kind of figuring out, having confidence that you can figure it out along the way and just like holding that confidence. Um, so yeah, let's take it back. So I would say that my I think my temperaments kind of lend me to it. I am a Virgo. I'm also a Gemini rising. If you're into all of that, you would know like kind of immediately how those astrology signs and the gifts of those signs can really lend themselves well to being an organized and adaptable virtual assistant. So that's one thing. So I will say that. So my fun fact is that I was a nun, and why this is relevant is that in my 20s, I was a nun, but I was also given a lot of responsibility during those 8 years, and I learned a lot on the fly. The nuns were actually probably where I learned how to be so resourceful, and they had this phrase called like toca la guitarra, which means to play the guitar in the sense of like you kind of have to just like strum until you're doing the thing. And so in our missionary life as missionary sisters, we had to do that a lot. It was kind of part of the lifestyle to kind of get thrown into something you maybe never had done before, whether that was work with children, whether that was write a talk on Saint so and so and deliver it to a classroom, whether it was go drive to this state and pick up this sister who's coming in from, this country in Europe and get her and bring her back. Whatever it was, you were often thrown into stuff for better or for worse. And so you kind of learned how to toca la guitarra, how to kind of like have the confidence that you will figure it out along the way. But also practically speaking, a lot of my roles as a nun and in the convent were in the admin field. A lot of them, not all, but a lot of them were. I was in charge of a lot of things. I was in charge of events and youth retreats and large like celebrations and organizing and delegating all of the things. And so like all of this, like a whole like catechism program. So it was like a lot of admin. So as there I am, 25, 26, 27, being given all of this responsibility, like, yes, I'm praying to God that like he gives me grace to do it all. And I think I had the natural gifts and capacity for it. So I got a lot of experience in those realms. Then I come home from the convent, and the first thing I did was become a teacher. I was a Spanish and religion teacher. So if you know anything, if you're a teacher, you know teachers generally have to be pretty organized. They have to lesson plan, they have to think ahead, you know, and also think on the fly when you're in there with the kids. And, lesson plans don't always go as expected. So you kind of have to like adapt. So teaching really did help me also to hone some skills in the wide realm of what could be future used as a virtual assistant. And then I would say, so I taught for 4 years, had a little bit of a gap doing like a juice bar gig, and then I moved out to Phoenix. And I'm like trying to keep this story concise. In Phoenix, my longest and like most prominent job was literally at a front desk of a nonprofit art center. And so that role was very specifically a lot of what you would call virtual assistant tasks. It was a lot of admin, a lot of back end organizing, a lot of processing payments and clients and class lists for the art classes and, just more organizing and keeping things clean and being kind of the person who, or one of the people who knew kind of what was going on in a lot of the corners of the place, had my hands in a lot of the things. Um, and so that was like 3.5 years, give or take 3 years maybe. Um, and then for my last year in Phoenix, my last year in Phoenix, 2019 to 2020, was when I started being a virtual assistant. And so I left the art center and I was like, you know what? Because I was burnt out, I will say. I identify as a highly sensitive person. So if you are in that camp, you'll understand. But after having been a nun, a very missionary out in the world nun for 8 years with a lot of responsibility, then a teacher, K through 8 for 3, 4 years, then a front desk person. I was very burnt out by people and by having to go into the workplace. And so in 2019, I resigned from the art center and I was like, you know what? I have all these skills. I felt very confident, having been at the art center for 3 years. The art center is huge. It wasn't like some itty bitty, like little town art center. No offense to those. Those are great too. But it was vast. I mean, it had like thousands of students. It had like dozens, probably more than dozens of art classes every semester. It was huge. I was also in charge of the open house there every year, organizing that, all of uh, the art, like basically mini classes that were there at the open house that was free for everyone to come to. It was huge. So I felt really confident that the skills I had at that point a business owner would find valuable. And that was kind of my goal. I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave and I'm gonna be a VA. I don't know. I think on YouTube I had found people who were doing this and I had followed someone and I was like, I'm gonna make my own website and I'm gonna market myself as a VA and I'm confident that I can help business owners with like a variety of things. And so I did. I left, I created my own WordPress website, which by the way, now I know like that was, what's the word? Ambitious of me. And I did it. It seemed easy at the time. Looking back now as a VA and having worked on multiple website platforms, I will say, don't do it unless you're a super tech nerd and want to specialize in it. So anyway, but it was fine. It did what it had to do for a couple years. So I made my website and then I started marketing myself in my like neighborhood Facebook groups. And I think I landed at like 2 clients, very low work, like minimal projects, like a few hours a month, but still. No, I would say, yeah, one, two. I can think of two off the top of my head that I had that summer. Um, yeah, but it was like a start, and I could get some work under my wings. I also got another part-time job as a front desk person in a chiropractic office, but this was much small. This was like literally, it was just a chiropractor and me. It was a very small yet successful business. It was much more my speed, and it was only like 3 days a week. I think it was like 12 hours a week. So I was doing that. I was doing work for a couple small clients. I was also pet sitting at the time. So I was like in this like transition, right? I was like in the hustle. So I did that for a year and then COVID hit. So nobody was traveling. I wasn't getting the pet sit, a couple pet sits were canceled that spring and summer that COVID was coming, pending. So it was also at that time that I moved back to New Jersey. So I moved back and I actually didn't know if I was going to stay. It was kind of just like a temporary transitional moment in my life. And for the summer, I just kind of lollygagged around and went on different adventures with my mom and all of that. But then, and I wasn't even actively like I was still doing work for I think just one of the VA clients. I think in that summer I had had three, and one of them continued through into 2020. So I was doing a little bit of gig work, but not a lot. And I didn't really know if I was going to stay in New Jersey. However, the fall of that year, when I was not even looking for a W-2 job, um, I found one that I really liked in a Facebook group. I applied and I got it. And that I am still working with that woman today. She is my client now. So that is 2020, fall of 2020. We're in the May, almost June of 2026. That one move proceeded to really be impactful in my life. And so they were hiring for, it was a part-time position, 25 hours a week, which is good. I did not want to go back to 40-hour a week positions, and I have not since 2019. Thank you, Jesus. But it was a 25-hour a week position as an intake coordinator at a therapy practice. Why I would take a job that required being on the phone, I must have really been in like a healed, calm place to do that because looking back now, I'm like, whoa. But I only lasted in that role for a year. I was the intake coordinator. It was great. The team there was great. I really did love working with them, and I still work with these people today. Um, but after 1 year, the owner of the practice was like, "Hey, Kelly Sue, instead of being the intake coordinator, I would love to know what you think about being like my assistant, like an executive assistant for me." Because she not only had this business, she was in addition to the therapy practice of therapists seeing clients, she also was opening a consulting kind of coaching practice to coach and teach other therapists how to have their own practice or um, have like courses in how to be a better like DBT therapist or all different kinds of things, retreats, things like that. And so I definitely jumped at that chance because I did not want to be on the phone anymore. And it was more specific. It was really what I was looking for in 2019. When I left the art center, I was like, you know what? At the art center, I have a ton of skills and I'm using them across to many, many people. I'm reporting. I had someone to report to, but there was, you know, also I'm reporting all day to students, to the people calling the art center, to the instructors who need this, that, and the other thing. It felt like my skill sets were like, parsed out to so many people. And it was, for me being a highly sensitive person, it ended up being draining after a certain amount of time. Even though I love all of those people and I really loved my experience there. Um, my like nervous system couldn't, it wasn't sustainable for me. So when I left, my kind of idea was I'm just going to be the main like right hand girl for one business owner. Like that is what I would have loved to do from out of the gate. While that didn't happen in 2019, I kind of had project work from people or minor ongoing maintenance like projects for people. I got like my foot in the door, but it wasn't like taking off how I hoped it would. And if you're an entrepreneur, you know that usually it doesn't take off the first time around. Although I will say for me, pet sitting did. But um, this time when she asked me to be her EA, I was like, oh, and I like harkened back to 2019. This would have been fall of 2021. And I was like, oh, like this is the vision I had like 2 years ago when I wanted to leave the art center. I wanted to just report to one person. Now I knew working for this person wouldn't mean I wouldn't have to interact with a bunch of other people like the therapists and et cetera. But it felt like it did simplify things. And I wouldn't be on the phone, which I also loved. Um, so just making sure it's recorded for a second there. I was like, oh my gosh, did I press record? It's been a minute since I made some videos. I also want to say, I'm sorry that I don't have a microphone. We moved in here a few months ago and I didn't bring like all the little things that I just didn't think I would need. And so I don't have a microphone today, but I hope to go get it back sometime soon. So picking up where I left off. So I was actually an executive assistant for about 2 years, almost exactly 2 years. Yeah, it was 2022 actually when I started doing that. It must have been 2022, 2023. I don't remember. I think it was 2 years. So I was her EA, the same amount of time, 20 to 25 hours a week. Um, and I think that really upped my skill sets. I was great before, but being like literally inside of people's businesses, she actually has like three LLCs where she interacts with humans, and she also has another LLC that's like, I guess you could call it real estate. Um, Being behind the scenes so intimately of this person's businesses and really being her catch-all person sharpened my skill sets so much, and also my knowledge base. Insofar as like I was the person who, if we had to learn a new platform or do a thing, I was like learning, I still am. I'm learning new platforms. I'm going in there and figuring it out. I learned everything back then from Google. Now it's like I learn it from Chat or Claude, whatever. But it's like always learning on the fly. And she was too. I mean, she had only opened her first business in 2018. So when I came on the scene, her business was 2 years old. Then when I was her EA, she was just opening. That's kind of was the impetus to hire me, was because she was opening her second business. So we were both kind of in the trenches together of opening the second business while maintaining this one. And then this one, the first one, she opened a second branch. And so that was the whole thing. So I just learned so much there. And nothing was formal training. And I will say after that, it was great. And again, over time, I'm always like searching for freedom. That is like has always been a high value for me. I think post-convent, because in the convent we didn't have any freedom, like time freedom and choice freedom and the schedule freedom. That's like a video for another day. But I, while I still love this person and working for both of their businesses. I didn't love being an employee. I didn't love feeling like I had to hit 25 hours a week, which I kind of did if I wanted to keep like my insurance, which eventually I think the last year I gave up my insurance. And I just got like a marketplace plan because it was actually cheaper. But for a while I had to, I had to hit a certain amount of hours. I was also, as a part of her leadership team, I was required to go in person quarterly for meetings with the leadership team, people who I love, but I hated going to anything in person for work stuff. So that I didn't like either. Basically, I don't like being told what to do and how to be somewhere at a certain time. I just don't like that. It feels like very constrictive to me. So I knew I was like, I got to get out of this W-2 world for good. Um, so that's when I would say that last year, like 2024, going into 2024, around the holidays, the new year, I was like cleaning up my website. I was kind of getting clear on my skill sets and what I did for her that I liked and what I did for her that I didn't like. Like there was stuff I hated planning. I hated doing her travel planning and personal appointments. I didn't like that was more like almost like personal assistant stuff. I didn't like doing those types of things. I don't mind appointments, but I guess more the travel planning and itinerary and buying plane tickets. So I knew I didn't want to do that. I knew I didn't want to be heavy on the social media because I myself don't even buy into that type of marketing. So it's hard for me to get zealous about it. But I kind of knew the things I did like doing. And what I did in that new year was I reached out to someone who I knew from the art center. She had been the art center's accountant. She had her own business. She was a contractor hired by the art center to do the accounting for the nonprofit. And I reached out to her. We were still in good contact. We were Facebook friends, Instagram, little like hurrahs and cheerleaders along the way in those last, few years. And I was like, hey, do you need any help? I'm getting back into the VA work. I've been a W-2, kind of done these different things the past few years, but I'm aiming to get back out on my own and wanted to know if you needed a VA or any like admin support or any graphic design support, things like that. And she like jumped on right away. And so even though I had still my W-2 position, I took her on at 5 hours a week. I told her I could do max 5 hours a week. It didn't always end up to be that, but I started taking on projects for her that fall. I think we started in like February, March. So she became my first client. I was still working my W-2. And then that summer, I, another person who I knew, all this time, I'm like expanding my capacity to do these two things and thinking and letting people know and refining my message, refining my graphics. I switched my website over to Squarespace, which is the one you see now, which I love so much better. I shared that with some of the people in my circle. And another person in my circle who was actually a pet sitting client at the time, she's a lawyer and had just maybe the year before left her corporate lawyer job to start her private practice. And she was looking for like graphic design and like branding support. And so I started with her a couple hours a week. So then I had two VA clients and my part-time W-2 as an EA. But once I had the second one that summer, that's when I let my former boss know that come such and such. I think I gave her about 2 months notice. I mean, I've always been someone to give a good amount of notice. I think for the art center, the chiropractor, I gave like a month's notice minimally. Um, because for me, I want to be able to transfer my knowledge to the next person if possible. And I don't want to like freak out anyone and burn any bridges. And I don't think I have this whole time. Because I've really enjoyed all the places that I worked at. And so, yeah, so I had the two clients. I kind of put in my time as a W-2 person. We kind of transitioned out of that, but that business owner then hired me back just at less hours. She was like, "Well, let's do a package of what ends up being about 8 to 10 hours a week." And that's still what I do for her. And so I have those three clients. And then last year, a little over a year, I onboarded a fourth. And so right now I have four regular clients who always add up to, 17 to 20 hours a week for me. So that's kind of my story with my background. As you can see, there's literally no schooling. I have not paid for any virtual assistant course. Have I watched videos? Sure. Have I learned from free resources like how to do things in Canva or how to learn how to do things in Zoom and set up webinar, all of yes, I've done a lot of free research and used free tools that are available to me, but I haven't taken any courses. And I will say that the four clients who I have right now, I have had them for multiple years at this point. So I've had one, my most recent one I've had for a year. The two first ones I've had now since 2024, so 2 years. And then the other one I've had for as a client for a year and a half, but I've been in her field for since 2020. So I make good relationships and I become a reliable person to them because that's what I value. I don't want to be looking for clients all the time. I don't want to be doing project work all the time. I want to be someone. So that's also why I look to work for like solopreneurs. Like my first client, she was great because she had been a solopreneur for like 10 years and had never like hired someone really. And fits and start. I think she like tried to hire her niece to do a project and like the girl like, flaked. And like I came in and I like knocked out this huge project for her that had been like sitting on her back burner forever. And so I like being that person who um maybe is someone's first hire because I am so versatile. I can do a lot. Nothing really surprises me at this point in the business owner journey. Sure, there are things I like doing more and less, but if you just need someone to do the things, um, nothing is random for me. I've probably seen it all at this point, or most of it. So yeah, so I would say, and I share all of this with you just to see how like varied the journey has been and how I just kind of kept taking everything I learned, because in each position you learn new skills and you learn new um, platforms and stuff, and then you can kind of figure out what do you enjoy doing, what would you rather people not know you know how to do and just leave it and kind of lead with that. And also I have found, as you can see, that the best people to be your first clients are already in your circles. They're already people you've probably worked with. Like all three are people who I knew before. So someone who I knew from the art center, someone who I knew as a pet sitting client, and then someone who had been my boss. And then this fourth one was the first one's referral. So she referred her to me. They're both in like the finance world. So I mean, I have barely had to do, knock on wood, my own marketing. I have put stuff out in the beginning. I was putting stuff out in the Facebook groups and all these things. Um, And that's how the pet sitting client knew because I shared with her directly. I also shared on my Instagram about my new website that I had like just made, and it did bring some attention from that pet sitting client. But yeah, I don't want to be looking for new clients all the time, so I try to become a very steady, consistent support to these people. And really, that's what they need. They need a reliable person who's like pretty versatile. Or you can also specialize in something, and that's okay too. I've worked with and alongside of other contractors who are specialists, videographers, social media managers. I worked with a lot of them. I'm glad they do it because I don't want to do it. Um, yeah, so I'm going to stop there, and thanks for being here.